Welcome to Taking Stock. I'm Amanda Lang. Coming up in the show, it's no secret Canada lacks primary care physicians. We'll hear some suggested solutions. And how does the jobs picture line up with a potential recession? Plus, car thefts are skyrocketing. How and why and what you might do about it. That's all ahead. First, though, for the week that was in business, it's time for the briefs. Interest rates are headed even higher in Canada. That's the conclusion after a blunt message this week from Canada's central bank governor. Tiff Macklem said that inflationary pressure in the Canadian economy has become a domestically created problem, which requires higher rates.
Look, inflation's too high. And frankly, Canadians should be asking us some tough questions.
The intention is to cool the economy down by slowing down borrowing and spending, the risk being a recession that is now all but inevitable. The jobs picture in September was neutral, with a small number of jobs created and an equal number of people, 20,000, leaving the workforce. That pushed the unemployment rate down slightly to 5.2%, still near historic lows. Relief from high energy prices may be temporary thanks to a decision by OPEC this week to cut oil production. The 15-country oil cartel agreed to reduce output by 2 million barrels a day in order to drive the price of oil higher. Good for member countries, but bad for inflation globally. It came despite vocal opposition from many countries, including the United States, which said it may release oil from its strategic reserves to try to lower the price. Home sales continued to decline in September, though the picture varied across the country. In Toronto, volume of sales fell and new listings dried up as prices softened another 1.2%, taking the average price down 17% from the peak earlier this year. A similar pattern was seen in Vancouver, with sales softening again as the volume of listings also dropped. In Calgary, sales are down 12% year over year, but there is some evidence of buyers shifting to less pricey options there, such as townhouses and condos. Pipeline giant TC Energy is investing $146 million in a solar energy farm in southern Alberta. The project is part of TC Energy's build-out of renewable offerings. It's a hybrid of solar with battery storage capacity. At 81 megawatts, it will produce enough power for 20,000 homes. The announcement came the same week that oil and gas company Suncor said it will wind up all of its wind and solar investments through a $730 million sale. Starting this week, merchants in Canada are able to charge customers a transaction fee for using a credit card. The result of a lawsuit by retailers against the credit card companies themselves, it will add some transparency to the expense of credit cards and add up to 2.4% to your bill. It remains to be seen how many retailers impose the fee and how customers react to it. And those are your business briefs. It's no secret that Canada has a shortage of primary care physicians. Getting a new GP can feel like an impossible goal. Now, the group of doctors that advised the government of Ontario during pandemic is shedding new light on this problem and offering up some ideas about what to do. Dr. Allan Grill is Chief of Family Medicine at Markham Stouffville Hospital. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Grill.
My pleasure.
So I want to just roll back here, because the point that you make so well in this report is this is the Ontario Science Advisory Committee. The GP played a critical role in pandemic, a really important and useful role, but there aren't enough of them, and we know we've had a shortage. Is it worse today than it was back in 2019?
So thanks so much. Yeah, my hat goes off to my colleagues in primary care that did a lot of great work during the pandemic and continue to do a lot of important work for their patients. You know, one of the things that we're struggling with right now is a shortage of family physicians and primary care providers. There's about 1.8 million Ontarians that don't have access to one, and there's about 1.7 million whose family physician or primary care practitioner is nearing retirement. So, you know, in the next couple of years, there could be 3 million people, or 1 in 5 Ontarians, who don't have access to an attachment of a primary care provider, which is a real problem, right? Because we do things like vaccinations, chronic disease management, mental health, you know, well baby checks, sort of like cradle to grave care. The pandemic has also introduced a lot of other things that people need, like vaccinations, treating them for COVID, monitoring them at home. These are all things that are done by primary care. And I think what the science table emphasized in their report is that if we want to provide all these services, you need better investment in infrastructure, because trying to do everything we normally were doing before the pandemic and then adding these services is quite tough if you don't actually support primary care.
So we have this shortage. It's gotten worse. It's getting worse. What are some of the suggestions about trying to address it? How can we, because it could take a while, right? To train a doctor takes years. How do we address this in a way that can make a big impact?
Yeah. So short term, I think we can make access to foreign trained primary care providers easier. So you can make the process, if we know they've been trained internationally and they're living here in Canada, we can get them involved, working in the system much quicker. And we can also look at investing into more training positions for medical students and residents moving forward. Longer term, I think we need more investment in family medicine teams, these team-based models. So I happen to work in one in Markham. It allows you to have more healthcare providers to spend time with patients, so the family physician can go and do other things, not have to be everything to every patient. So for instance, mental health issues can go to our social work team, so they can take some of that work away from us. The other thing about having a team that we saw during the pandemic is more patients that had access to a team-based care, which is only 25% of them. They were better in terms of getting vaccinations. They were better in terms of being able to be monitored at home because those extra resources were there. I think the other thing that we can make easier for family physicians is the admin burden. For instance, other healthcare systems that have good primary care systems have done things like central referrals. So instead of me spending hours with my staff trying to figure out where to send a patient when they need help out of my scope, we can have a central body doing that for us. So it allows us to spend more time with our own patients and allows us to take on patients as well.
So all good ideas and likely to make meaningful change in the way the work gets done. One quick question here, not a lot of time, but do we need to pay doctors more? Would we attract more people to the profession if it were a more lucrative profession?
You know, I don't think it's just about remuneration. Obviously, recruitment and retention revolves around that, but there's other things that I think a lot of us are feeling right now. Burnout has been a huge problem during this pandemic because everybody's been working hard. Most of my colleagues aren't necessarily interested in, if they get paid a certain amount more money, it's going to make them work harder. I think we have to work more efficiently. I think we have to work on things like infrastructure and team-based care so that we don't feel like we have a million things to do every day. And I think that's going to bring motivation and pleasure back to what we're doing. We're very happy in primary care. It's what we love to do. So I think we just have to look at how we're working, be more creative with it, and then I think it'll be a more pleasant place to work in.
So great to have you with us. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Dr. Allan Grill, Chief of Family Medicine at Markham Stouffville Hospital. Coming up, the contradiction of a strong jobs market and a pending recession. Stay with us.